All right. It looks like it's the top of the hour, so we will get all set and ready to begin our panel on content curation through virtual world communities. We're going to be speaking in voice, but we will also be sharing through text chat with our speakeasy. And I'm going to get us started and introduce our panelists briefly. What we hope to do today is give you an overview of curation and content curation at the intersection of virtual worlds. Curation has become quite a hot topic over the past couple of years, sort of a buzzword in education. Just like a couple of years ago, the MOOC, 2012 was like the year of the MOOC. Well, everyone's talking about curation and all the many, many tools there are out there for us to be curators. And I think today, myself, along with our panelists, will try to give you some different perspectives on this topic. And each one of us will tell a little bit about ourselves and give you a brief biography. I'm Dr. Valerie Hill. I'm also known as the librarian in virtual worlds, and my background is in library science, library and information science. I served as a school librarian for about 20 years. I just retired from that position. I also have been an instructor of library and information science at Texas Women's University. And my focus currently, I've been researching information literacy, particularly in global digital participatory culture, which is where I believe we all now live. All of our students are growing up not in the same environment that we grew up, and you all hear about that all the time. Education must change, education has changed, but really we do live in a completely different culture because we live in a global digital participatory culture, and students have access to information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right in their pocket on their mobile devices. Even kindergartners, they come into to school now more comfortable with a mouse than with a pencil. So things have definitely changed, and that change in our culture has really also given us just really changed the way that we are literate. Information literacy has definitely changed, and that's my perspective. So first of all, I wanted to talk a little bit about what is curation. I think it's important to think about curation as the selection, the preservation, and the archival of resources. And when I say that, it sounds like a librarian to me. I mean, that's exactly what librarians and people who work in museums, museum curators, that's what they're trained to do for specific communities. And so I think it's kind of interesting to think about how everybody can be a librarian now. I think when you think about photography, how our mobile phones with these high quality cameras built right in make everyone feel like they're a photographer. Everyone is a photographer now, because we all can have blogs and we can, write content and share it to anyone we want across the globe. We're all really journalists now. We can consider ourselves journalists, consider ourselves photographers, and now we can consider ourselves librarians because we can curate. But I think we might want to think about how there is something to be said about professional training. A high-quality photographer really can take a picture that, we might take 1,000 pictures on our smartphone and not really get that one fantastic shot, that the trained photographer might take. Well, there's something to be said for doing something well, for professionalism and for talent. And I think it's important that we remember that because I think a lot of us just think that it's so easy, to do anything now that we have all these digital tools, and it may be easy, but it may not turn out great. It still does take a really good eye, and it takes understanding of the tools, and it takes professionalism for some things to be done right. So today, we can do all of these things for just about any reason. Trained professionals do that within their professional community, but you can just do things for fun. You can take pictures for fun, you can curate for fun, you can just do it for your own peeps, which is what most people do. Most people just are curating for their family and their friends, not necessarily for a professional community. But when we talk about the concept of global digital participatory culture, which is what I like to say is the culture that now students all live in, I want you to think about that for just a minute. What exactly is global digital participatory culture? I know some people have, it sounds like a really big educational term for where we now live, and some people are like, I don't really get what you mean. Well, if you don't get what I mean, just walk around in Starbucks sometime, and when you look around, or anywhere you go really on the street, when you look around, people are on their mobile devices everywhere. And one time I walked into a particular Starbucks and I looked around and every single person was on either a laptop or a phone, and none of them were talking to each other. They were all elsewhere. They were someplace else. And I think if you haven't heard of Sherry Turkle's book, Alone Together, it really presents the darker side of what I'm talking about, how we're all on our mobile devices, and sometimes it's really more isolating than it is connective. And she talks about how we may be all together in the same room, but we're really not, because we're somewhere else. Those of us that have been in virtual worlds understand that you can be somewhere else and still have a sense of presence. We can still actually feel like we are together rather than walking down the street with our smartphone about to bump into a wall. There's a difference there when you think about that. But global digital participatory culture is really where we live, and I think that when you think about how people are connected on all of their mobile devices and on their smartphones and all of these things, we all live in virtual worlds. We think about that at this conference, what's a virtual world, what are the best practices for virtual worlds in education. People who have not been in a virtual world such as Second Life with an avatar, they might not realize what a virtual world is, but everyone in global digital participatory culture lives in a virtual world, whether or not they have an avatar. That's really beside the point, because we all live in a digital space that's virtual as well as in a physical space. It might be an augmented space, but we all do live in global digital participatory culture. Now, on the slide that you're seeing right now, I think you will see a picture of many of the different sites that we're going to talk, well, some of the sites we're going to talk about, but we'll talk about many more, where people are producing digital content. And even young children are producing digital content. In my school library, my campus went to using iPads recently, and even the kindergartners were using augmented reality tools to prepare and present videos. They were using all kinds of different apps to produce their own digital content. So I like to talk about how, since information literacy has changed, we now can call ourselves prosumers. And the first person to coin that term is the guy on the slide right there, Alvin Toffler. Way back in the 80s, he wrote the book, The Third Wave, and he talked about how we are moving towards a culture where we produce as much as we consume. In my opinion, we are producing more than we are consuming, more resources. Think of all the pictures that we upload and all the content that we upload all the time to the web. We are actually sending more out than we're taking in, or at least a lot of people are. So I think, I'm seeing some yeses that some of you agree that we are producing more than we consume. We scroll through our incoming feed, but a lot of people are producing more than they consume. Well, this has to do with information literacy, because when you think about it, reading and writing is your intake, writing is your output. The same thing with audio visuals. You can listen and you can speak. Well, you can also do that digitally. You are producing some content and you are, gathering that content. But if you don't think about the quality of it, if you're not information literate, a lot of the time it's just garbage, or it's just scrolling through a lot of nonsense. And a lot of the content that people produce is just funny, silly nonsense as well. And so I think it's important that we begin to see how students need to learn how to be personally responsible for their intake and their output, for their consumption and their production. as prosumers in global digital participatory culture, because it's not just in school, it's in life. It's 24/7 that we have access to information. So the reason we are literate with our information literacy is not so that we can get good grades. It's not so that at school our academic performance is successful. It's really so that we are digital citizens 24/7 wherever we live, because it's life. It's not just school. So I think it's important that we think about that. We don't live any longer in a top-down hierarchy of information. You and I did live in that hierarchy growing up. In school, we had access to encyclopedias, some of us who are older. We had access to, mostly to books that were published through traditional publishing sources, where accuracy and authority were important, because those books didn't get published unless they went through a long process. And now we read more, we have more intake of things that have not gone through a traditional publishing source. Most of us, will go online to resources that we really have to evaluate, because it might be someone's blog, someone's opinion. There's so many resources out there now that have not been reviewed and that are not necessarily accurate, that have a lot of opinion. And students really have to, you and I didn't have to do that when we were growing up, because we didn't have access to that, very, very, very often. So I think it's important that we think about how these things have changed and how content curation is part of that change. And I'd like to look at some of the icons up there on the stage: Facebook, Twitter, Scoot, Zite. Some of these tools where you can curate your own content, SlideShare, and follow people, and you can curate all of the great slides out there, the educational slides that you're interested in. If you in the text chat, tools you use them. So if you use Twitter, Facebook, if there's one that you use particularly, Pinterest, for example, and I know some of my panelists here are going to talk about some of the better curation sites and how to use them. But and I don't know how many of you've used all of them. Some people use tons of them too, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But I think I also want to mention that most of the information that we get comes from traditional publishers. We are living now in a bottom-up society. It comes from us. It comes from all these information source on the planet. Anybody want to guess what it is? The #1 information source on the planet is YouTube. If you want to know how to do something from French braid your hair to change your your plumbing under your kitchen sink, where do you go? YouTube, because you can see a video of it and you can actually learn how to do it. So that really changes things, when you think about the #1 information source on the planet. And I think I love this phrase. You can Google this later, but I love the phrase that we are living right now at the close of the Gutenberg parenthesis. I think that is just a great way to think about this changing hierarchy. Growing up, when book was king of the planet, a book was really important. I'm holding a little virtual book in my avatar's hand right now because as a librarian, of course, I think the book is a pretty cool format, especially a printed book, even though I do read ebooks. But we are living at the close of the Gutenberg parenthesis. Now think about 2 parentheses. I'll put that in text chat if I can do it while I'm standing here. I'm going to even close it. Gutenberg parenthesis. Okay, here's 2 parentheses. Way back in the 1500s, when Gutenberg invented the printing press, all of a sudden the common man got something really special. The book. Before that, all we had was the oral tradition. And then everybody got to get the book, and it became really, really important that we all read. And growing up, all of us, reading was really, reading was fundamental. Reading a book was just something that you had to do to be a successful student. Well, now we're at the close of that. And the close of the Gutenberg parentheses means the printed book is no longer king of the hierarchy. Digital content is now king. And it's really cool. Don't you think that we were alive to witness this close of an era it's over. A lot of people don't realize it's over, but it has ended, the Gutenberg parentheses. So you can look that up later, and Thomas Pettit is the first guy who coined that term. So how does this prosumerism and content curation evolution intersect with virtual worlds? My co-panelists and I are going to share some interesting ways that virtual communities can utilize content curation. For me personally, I've been working with librarians in Second Life to curate educational content for about the past 8 years. And some examples of content curation. I think there's the next slide, Zinnia, shows math in 3D. Okay, here's a site that I have curated. A colleague of mine is a math educator, and he made this incredible way to enter math. You could enter millions of cubes. Well, a math teacher can't give their students millions of cubes to play with in their classroom. You wouldn't be able to clean that up, right? But you can virtually. So here's an example of being able to do something in a virtual world that you can't in a physical world. And as a librarian, I have been able to curate some of these examples of immersive learning experiences that we can do that you cannot possibly do in the physical world. And then what I like to do is try to archive these examples with machinima, and I'm going to see if I can put I might have done it twice accidentally. If I did, that's an example of some of my YouTube machinima of educational immersive learning experiences that I've archived and curated on YouTube. And another example of a curation site that allows anybody to just curate all kinds of digital content and then share them across the globe is LiveBinder. Have any of you are you familiar with LiveBinder? If you are, if you type in text chat, a Y. LiveBinder is a really great tool because you can just put all kinds of different things, not just video, but put it all into this one page, sort of like a physical binder. I'm hearing somebody's got their voice on or something. It's kind of a funny sound there. Here's the LiveBinder I did for Anne Frank, which was an immersive learning environment in another virtual world on the OpenSim, where students could go in and experience Anne's life in hiding. And each avatar would go into her cramped quarters there in Amsterdam. And it was just an amazing example of how a virtual space is like entering the book. Sure, the Diary of Anne Frank is like one of the biggest sellers in the most languages across the globe, and it's a really important book, that brings history to a personal example of a girl's real, life experience. But reading the book is one experience, but then to be able to, as an avatar, go inside that experience and talk about it with other people is a whole other thing. So it was an exciting experience to go with some other educators into the Anne Frank MOOC and see how that would be experienced in an immersive learning environment. So there are numerous curation sites that you can choose from where you can curate content, and it looks really similar to magazines. For example, Scoop It, and if you stay on that slide, Zinnia, the one that has Scoop It on it, Scoop It, the first time I ran into Scoop It, I thought it was interesting because I ran into Mal Burns on Scoop It. And if any of you know Mal Burns, he's quite active here in Second Life in the metaverse, as he likes to call it. And it's funny because, of course, I've never met Mal Burns. He lives in the UK, but I've bumped into him virtually so many times on all these content curation sites. And his was the first that I saw on Scoop It. And I was like, how does Mal Burns have this really cool magazine? And then I realized that all you have to do is click one button and you can just scoop anything and curate it on this site called Scoop It. There are so many of these sites that make it look so easy, but I think it's important to point out here information literacy, because just because something looks so beautiful and sleek, it's an example that we're all journalists now, but we have to really think carefully about what it is we are scooping or what it is that we're curating and what it is that we are following and reading, because the more that we just tune in to what the topic is that we are interested in, the less we're exposed to other things outside of our perspectives. So now think about that a minute. Think about what I just said. If we personalize our dashboards so much that we only hang out with the people just like us, we don't bump into other perspectives. So this is part of information literacy, to really think about what it is that we are evaluating online and what it is that we are curating. I can't just follow the people who are into what I'm into, or I'm missing so much. And I think, here's a book I'd like to recommend. Aaron Barlow and John Lester wrote Beyond the Blogosphere. And this is a cool thing they said. If we don't think about what's going on here on the internet, if we don't have information literacy, cite our sources, think about what we're reading, the internet could become a book of sand. If nobody cites anything, it's just a book of sand. So it's a really cool book, Beyond the Blogosphere. Information literacy and global digital participatory culture is imperative to our future. And not just the future of education, the future of civilization. So I think we really need to think about this. So I want to say, another site that's I think is really, really important for content curation is Twitter. How many of you have Twitter, are using Twitter? If you are, you might want to put your Twitter handle in the text chat, so maybe we can, make some connections here. Twitter is a really great way to curate content because on Twitter, you can create virtual communities right through your lists. You can list different people and gather people. And I think curating individuals and communities is important. As a librarian, I think it comes, it's natural for me to think about curating, not only to curate resources, but also to curate networks and communities, to curate platforms and worlds. Librarians, back nearly a decade ago, but they've certainly branched out to other virtual worlds beyond Second Life. In fact, I know some of you here may have heard of a new virtual world that some librarians are working on that's web-based called InfoQuest. And I'm going to be, hopefully, if everything's working out well with the new interface, I'm going to be one of the keynote speakers in the new Unity Jibe World of InfoQuest on March 30th. It's coming up here real soon. And on the next slide, Zinnia, I'll move on past Twitter because I know some of the panelists are probably going to discuss curating, through Twitter and some of these tools during your part of the speaking. But I wanted to show this slide here of some librarians collaborating and going to other virtual worlds, because I think this also ties in with curation. You not only can curate personal networks by gathering people in your network, some of them who you have not even met physically. Of my panelists sitting here, I have met Zinnia in the physical world several times, but I have not yet met Beth or Rhiannon. And it's like, yet you can form relationships in this virtual world where you know someone just as well as you do a colleague that you work with in the physical world. Type a Y in text chat if you have made some connections in a virtual world that you feel just as close to as people that you work with, and I see all the Y's flying. Yes, it's true. You can be just as close with people in a virtual world as you can in the physical world. And this slide shows some librarians curating content in a different virtual world than Second Life, and grid hopping, as we call it, to other virtual worlds. To think of curation beyond just curating words, it's not just words, and it's not just any particular format. Information literacy, as I said, has absolutely changed. And some people like to even use different words for information literacy. On the next slide, you'll see a little bit about information literacy and how it is changing. When we think about information literacy, it's the understanding of how to use information, to gather information, to access that information, to evaluate that information, and to use it effectively. That's the definition of information literacy. And that can be in any format: virtual, digital, physical, augmented. It could be, words, logos, videos, anything. But some people like to change that word. There's a whole movement now from the Association of College and Research Libraries to use the word meta-literacy, and I'm going to type that in text chat because it's a cool word. Meta being about, better spell literacy right, that would not be a good spelling error. Meta-literacy, about literacy. Some people would like to change this because meta-literacy tends to make you realize that it's multiple literacies, digital literacy, visual literacy, traditional literacy, reading, writing. But most experts in the field still prefer the term information literacy as the overall umbrella, because it really does seem natural to cover everything about information, that we are literate about information in the information age, no matter what type of information it is. I think, the future, we don't know exactly how the future will change as far as future trends in information literacy, but I do think it's really important that we think about how students are living in this different culture, and how, as educators, we need to think about the best practices for embedding information literacy in all the different ways that we teach. And I know my colleagues here are going to each show you their own perspectives in different ways that we can do that through content curation and virtual world communities. So next we're going to hear from Renne Brock-Richmond, who many of you know as Zinnia, and then we'll come back to this takeaway that I have up on the stage right now. Hopefully I can come back to this because, as I said, I think information literacy is imperative to the future of education and not just for grades. And I think it's a personal responsibility for digital citizenship for everyone, whether you are 2 years old or 102 years old. And as I said, students produce more content now than they consume. So Zinnia, you are up. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. Let's see. Thank you, guys. Sure appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thank you, Val, and great to be here with the team. So, let's see. If I can move myself. Sorry, Val. There you go. This has been a really great opportunity to work with this panel, and as Val mentioned before, a lot of us have been working together for a long time, and this is the first time I'm getting to utilize using Speakeasy and the HUD. So I want to share a little bit about me. So as Val mentioned, I'm Zinnia Zalber, but also Renne Brock-Richmond. I'm a college instructor, and I teach multimedia communications and art and social media marketing and color theory, all kinds of things. And in World, I work with the nonprofit Commons, and some people like to call me the mother duck of the University of Washington Ave alumni, although I don't quack. And I want to talk today about content curation to create a sense of self and community. My work has always been about identity and having a very good understanding. I think that's a cow that's going on. Identity and expression. As an artist, my work has always been, kind of involved with using apparel as a form of identity and storytelling. I did a lot of transmedia marketing before they called it transmedia marketing, and I really enjoy the fact that I can use virtual worlds to showcase these different skill sets that I have, as well as to help others embody what they want to share. Is it a camel? Okay, excellent, Franz. Thanks. So let's start off with how you would develop an authentic avatar. That's what I'm interested in us all having, is authentic avatars, and to inspire people through this. We can, look at branding as a way to identify ourselves. So first of all, I'm going to be sharing a couple slides from a much longer presentation. So here's the link in case you want to see the much longer presentation. It'll include a lot of my work about color theory and information and so forth. So this is kind of the sped up version of it, depending on did I get enough coffee to get through it. So branding. So you guys have experienced it, you know it. You're familiar with it, but what is it? So brand is defined as a name, a term, a sign, a symbol, or a design. So I always ask people, can you identify what the brand of Nike is? And when I say that, usually people put up their finger and make a swoosh symbol, right? They also know that the brand of Nike is just do it. So a brand is an important thing that can be embodied also within your avatar. So what does a brand need to do? So it needs to be able to articulate your message distinctly. It needs to demonstrate your credibility. It needs to emotionally connect with your target and inspire the buyer or the audience and solidify loyalty. Do you think that you experience that with fellow avatars? That if they show up as themselves or not themselves, do you feel like you have a different experience with them? Now, what do I mean by that? Well, what if I showed up all in black today? How many of you guys would be confused? Absolutely. So, being consistent, that's super important. No. I don't. Although I have some nice fuzzy black tights. I gotta cover them up with something else. So, what is our avatar? Our avatar is a visual representation of ourselves, right? This can be a professional form, this can be a playful form. It has all kinds of things that it needs to define along the way. And it encourages people to participate together, right? Excellent. Now we're also avatars in other spaces. In social media, we have avatars, and sometimes they may be just our profile pictures. As Val mentioned before, we have all kinds of different social media sites that we can, showcase the work we do in virtual worlds. And you guys listed several places. Now, one thing that I experience, since I post a lot and do a lot in virtual worlds, locally, I can show up to locations I've never met people, and they will know that my avatar's name is Zinnia. It's because it's in the newspaper. Phew, that's pretty fun. I also use social media in order to support the rest of us. That content curation encourages others to join us. Have you had someone who's seen something on Facebook and said, "What is that? What could that be? Can I go there?" Buffy, today you shared a little bit, you showed someone a picture of me and Facebook and my avatar, right? That makes people curious, and they might want to come in and enjoy us. Speaking of Buffy, she is one of my favorite icons to show as a authentic avatar. Now you know the quote from Buckaroo Banzai. It's about being yourself, because no matter where you go, there you are. So here's Buffy, one of the most iconic avatars in Second Life. I'll tell you what, Buffy, there was one time at a Second Life community conference, and we were dancing away on the dance floor, and they had, streaming in. Buffy! You're that easy to spot. Like me, haha. Now, in a virtual world, your representation is your reputation. So what does that mean? Your intent and your actions are how people are going to judge you. You will be remembered through all these things. I'm trying to get through my slides here. So, there are many different ways that people will appear in virtual worlds, and I'm sure that you recognize some of these folks on my slides. So I have Coran, I have Filthy, I have Drexstar, and Gracie. Do you know these folks? Some have created their appearance based on photos. Some don't look anything like their avatars. Some have had their trademarked. And some like to document the appearance of others and look like their own artwork in the world. Now for myself, my avatar looks like me. Yeah, we'll get Filthy back in. Now we all go through an evolution of our avatar. Do you ever look back at pictures of yourself when you first came in world? Aren't they adorable? Like we're little babies. We're so sweet, huh? How long did it take for you to define your authentic self within this world? You know, when we did, last year, we did a MOOC going to other virtual worlds, and we asked people about their avatars in different worlds. And they always said that their real avatar was the one in Second Life. Isn't that interesting? Their real avatar is the one that lives in Second Life. So, how do we create this authentic avatar? Well, I've got all kinds of different ways that we do it. You might want to build up a strategy in order to make it happen. So let's talk about creating that avatar. What's your mission? If you can define a mission, that might help guide you in many different ways. How do you want to engage with the world? Do you want to have an effect? Do you want to have an exchange? Do you want to observe? You want to think about it. Now I use a lot of my color theory and psychology associated with these things as well. Affecting, doing, action-packed red. Exchanging and expression, yellow. Observing and feeling, green. And analyzing and thinking, blue. Now, my colleagues at work also utilize this system to build teams in their classes. Isn't that cool? Which corner do you stand in? So let's talk about your assets. Now, whenever I say assets, I have to remember my quote of, watch your butt, not someone else's. So we have a couple different assets to look at. Your integrity. That's the consistency of your character. And I use a little chart from D&D, you know. Although last time I said D&D, someone said you forgot another D. So D&D and D? How's that sound? So what's your alignment? Are you lawful good? Are you chaotic neutral? What are you? And whatever it is, you might want to be consistent in it. How about your intensity? What's your passion? How do you show that through your avatar? Do most of the people around you know what your passion is? Clearly mine is, what, color and dark chocolate. Thank you, Joe. Yes. Fidelity is another part. Being a star. So, you know, putting it out there, high quality work, and showing it off, broadcasting it, just like Val was mentioning. There's all these ways that we can curate content to showcase what we do. Go for it, man. You got that avatar figured out, you might as well show off. And ability. Recognize and reward excellence. So, what do I mean by that? Hey, show off those superpowers in this space. This is part of our content creation embodied in our avatars. We're doing stuff. People are utilizing our superpowers. We are mixing and mingling among different communities. Does your community know what you're excellent at? And maybe they ask you to volunteer too much doing that? Could be. But that's not such a bad thing. All right. Your avatar appearance essentials. Now I have a picture up here of our friend Agile Bill. And Agile Bill wears a hard hat and tool belt in real life, too. It's pretty cool. Of course, I tease him if he doesn't have it on there. So let's talk about these essentials. What makes you unique and extraordinary? Your profile. How do you have your profile filled out? This is the way that you can market yourself quickly for folks. Do you guys scan other people's profiles when you're sitting at a meeting? What do you discover? Yeah, okay. And when someone doesn't have anything in their profile, what does that tell you? Oh, excellent, Renne. I think they're an alt. Yep. Okay. Do you encourage others to put things in their profiles? I'm pretty sure that most of my students put in their profile, I'm here because Zinnia said so. So, the big things that you need to focus on when you're putting things in your profile are going to be a call to action, clarity, consistency, and the connection. Okay. So let's talk about color. Yes. What hue are you? So these are some of the words that are associated with different colors. The psychology, the expression, the impression that people have based on these colors, what they mean. I know, wouldn't it be nice if we could right-click on people and really find out what their profile is? Yes, it would be very helpful if they also had their name tags up there too. Ah, excellent. Now you have homework, okay. So, what hue are you? Those colors that you choose have different messages. So please, please take some time. Oh, thank you. Take some time to find out what the colors you're wearing mean. Now you may notice that I have nothing up there with black. You know why? Because black is the absence of light. It doesn't have very many messages. So I'm encouraging more color. The different apparel you wear, also. Yes, okay, elegance, we'll go for that. But you know how I am about black. I understand I'm prejudiced about some colors. Black and brown and gray and beige and... Oh, these things will really scare me. Is this a picture of my real-life closet? It is! Absolutely. Can you tell? Yeah, when I used to do studio tours, people would come in my house to see my art, they really were only coming to see my closet. I have a lot of orange. Hey, it's always on sale. It's America's least favorite color. So, along with your apparel, you also have your gear. So, like Val's got her book, right? That identifies who she is and what she does. Do you have gear that might do that as well? And the way you stand also will affect how people relate to you. It is part of how you brand yourself. I know for myself, you know, I'm searched high and low to be sure that I could find a AO that didn't slouch, that would put their hands on their hips, stood up straight. That was really important for me. Okay. We also take on different body types, right? Now, let's see. When we were at the Federal Consortium of Virtual Worlds, I was too short to stand behind the pedestal. Being small is important to me. I like being short. Your size, oh excellent, Beth. Your size can influence how people engage with you, right? Okay. So, in conclusion about creating your authentic avatar, what do you want to do? Well, let me catch up on my speakeasy because I got excited about being short. Sorry about that. Come on, here we go. Alright, so articulate what you want people to know about you through your avatar's persuasive, persistent presence. Visually embody your mission and your brand and your purpose through your avatar. If you radically change your avatar, and we have some shapeshifters among us, right? You need to make that part of your deal, and you need to let people know about that. Your enthusiasm will lead to achievement, lead by example, and being yourself is the main thing. Now, we talked about being an individual. So let's go from the solo to society. Do you guys belong to a community in Second Life? What would you say is your main community? Do you participate in multiple communities? Excellent. Excellent. So, one of the communities that I'm part of is the University of Washington's Virtual Worlds certificate program. But I think that they're changing the name. Will it be immersive environments? Excellent. And they'll start it up again this fall? Excellent. So I was part of the first class that came through this program. And when we developed it, we were able to devise a lot of the symbols, the themes, the laws of what our world was going to be about. The hot air balloon was one of our assignments, and it became a symbol of our educational elevation. As we progressed and gathered more classes, Val was in the next year, gave us an opportunity to start building content that would be utilized in many different things. Now, you know, we all belong to a school, university, college, and you have an attachment to it, don't you? Maybe the school colors, maybe the mascot. It makes you feel like you're part of something. This place that you had an education, that you improved, you found friends, right? That's what we try to devise at the UW in our Sims. So every year we have new people coming in, and we try to include them and let them know that they're part of things. You also get a chance to make changes to these spaces. So this picture, I love this picture. So this is a picture of the napkin that Val and I devised over, what do we have? Currywurst and pretzels one day in the shadow at the real UW. And we devised a new project that we wanted to do, the Four Seasons. And it's a pie project. So we got together all these ideas about what the Four Seasons mean as a means to curate a virtual space. It was a way to be able to devise an attachment and different ideas so people could participate. And because we meet with our fellow alumni, we were able to share and get more ideas from them, how they wanted to participate. In doing that, that led to devising a wiki in order to put together our different themes that we had actually been developing for years and years and years. And we wanted to conceive an environment that can only happen in virtual worlds. That's our pie, which is a productive, immersive environment, a dynamic and flexible virtual space that can be customized to support focused engagement, education, and absorption. Doesn't that sound like a cool place to be? Yeah. Absolutely. And Renne, as you mentioned, I'm in that program right now. Now, because I like to come up with different ideas in curation in order to help support these things, I get to put together all these symbols and logos and and icons of our environment. Now, what does that do in building these things? It helps people feel like they can be part of something. Now, it doesn't mean things are written in stone, but that curation of building a community is a fluid and active thing. So you can see in my picture here that I have the symbol of the apple as it goes through the seasons. That it has flowers and leaves, and in the end it may have bare fruit. And you know what happens when you take a bite out of it, right? Oh, watch out. Also, we wanted to include connections with the elements. Now, in the Pacific Northwest, we have all of these different elements. We live on the Ring of Fire. Lots of crazy things can happen. I don't know about you guys, I lived through Mount St. Helens, so we got a lot of things that change very quickly here. We wanted to be sure that people could move through the space in different ways, teleporting, using hot air balloons, canoes, or walking. We also had some important colors that are associated with our community. Blue, purple, green, and gold. And we wanted to be sure that we created collaborative spaces that we could exhibit the past, the present, and the possible future. That informs people about the alumni, the UW program, and to encourage the new students to participate. We have information areas, libraries, museums, and maker spaces. Now, I mentioned color before, and I'd like to end on color. So I believe that color is a way of creating inclusion between individuals, groups, and audience members. So color can be important as an individual in your curation, but it also can be very important in order to have others. I produce a lot of events in world and out. And when I do that, I usually use a color theme so that people can participate with that. It encourages them to dress up accordingly and feel like there's something bigger than themselves. So I have pictures from our events that we do in Second Life, like I produce Common Ground with my teammates. And then in real life, I produce an art walk. Yes, Beth, there's your pub. That's why I picked it. See, it's a great. You just exposed the bridge I was going to make here, man. This is a good example of curation in action, guys. So, not only do I have virtual events, but I have physical events, and I use color there too. And I want you guys to know that when I have the art walk, I have a theme color for that night, and everyone dresses in those colors. And then right after that one, I do the same thing with our event Common Ground at the Nonprofit Commons. And you know what's really cool? Is that it makes people realize that they could be part of both of those things, and color can tie them together. So I'll end on color, and I'll encourage you to develop an authentic avatar if you haven't already, or support someone else to develop one, and to support an inclusive society. Thank you. And I'm going to hand it over to my teammate, Beth.
I'll go ahead and get started. I'm Beth Ghostraven, also known as Beth O'Connell in real life. I've been working with education groups in Second Life and now in Minecraft and OpenSim since 2012. Not that long ago, but I've spent a lot of time at it. My training as a librarian gives me the curation experience to gather and evaluate resources in virtual worlds. As educators, our professional connections are crucial for sharing ideas and knowledge as well as support. Virtual worlds enable us to connect with people inexpensively at all hours and seasons, adding to our PLNs, or professional learning networks. Slide. I'll send you all a note card describing the virtual world groups that I've found to be most helpful. Let's see here. It's also in the box up front, but I think I can just send it to everybody. You may have gotten a note card from me in the swag bag. This is slightly different. That's the name of the note card there. You can find that in your recent part of the inventory. I consider myself a liaison between all of these groups, and I do lots of cross-postings of meeting notifications among all of them. I like being able to connect people together and to help create community. My professional connections have gotten deeper and more numerous over the past few years. I thought about saying my virtual professional connections, but although the meeting places are virtual, the people and the connections are real. In many cases, they extend into other social media and into physical life. I make friends wherever I go in virtual worlds. The result of all these connections is that when someone is telling me about their project, I can often think of someone else who might be able to help them, resulting in more connections within the library and education communities. Slide. How do I find people to connect with professionally? I go to as many education and library events in virtual worlds as I can, and I browse profiles of the other attendees. When I see something interesting, I'll IM the person, especially if their appearance and communications in nearby chat seem fairly professional. Often I'll send a friend request after talking with them if it seems like they have education or library affiliations. The context in which I meet the person is one of the most important factors in curating this list, and appearance is probably the least important. Sometimes experienced educators are new to Second Life. They may look like newbies here, but in the education field, they're definitely not. These things, plus profiles and communications, are all just clues about how trustworthy the person behind the avatar might be. Just like in real life, we never actually absolutely know, but we do have clues. Next slide. This long list of friends can be quite unwieldy. I plan to make use of Firestorm's contact sets, which I just learned about in one of their Tooltip Tuesday videos. I'm not sure if I put that one on the note card or not. Next slide. Time doesn't allow me to go into a lot of detail about how to use these tools. This will be an overview of some of the best ways I've found to reach virtual world educators. There's information at the top of the note card about how to join in-world groups and find notices. The resources on the note card are in alphabetical order. This slide shows the ISTE Virtual Environment Network's massive open online calendar found at, there's the web address. That one is on the slide. This is where I and several other people post most of the education events that happen in virtual worlds. Next slide. OpenSim groups work the same way as Second Life groups do, although they're not used as often. So the things I'm going to show you here apply to OpenSim, except for, of course, the Second Life viewer. If you have your IMs forwarded to email, your group notices will appear there too. Group notices are found in the upper right-hand corner of your viewer in both the Second Life viewer and the Firestorm viewer. It's a little square you can see by the arrow on the slide. When you click the little square, the notices will drop down. Once you click OK, the notice disappears. You can find it later in the group profile. Next slide. The other way to find group notices is in the group profile. You can enable and disable notices and chat for that group here too. The left side shows the Second Life viewer. Here the Notices tab is the third one down. And then on the right, that's the Firestorm viewer. The Notices tab is at the top. In Firestorm, you can sort the notices by date to bring the most recent one to the top of the list. If there's an attachment, like a note card, a landmark, you can click Open Attachment to add it to your inventory. Next slide. Although group notices aren't always reliable, I put them out as early as I can, then again on the same day of the event. Sometimes those days are the same. And actually, I'm thinking about what we just heard in the keynote. I'm thinking maybe 20 minutes is the optimal time. They provide a handy in-world reference, especially helpful for people who can't run both a viewer and a browser. A few groups allow anyone to post notices. It's important to talk to a group administrator before posting notices to check their policy on cross-posting from other groups. That can go for putting things in chat too. I try to be careful about where and how many notices I put out, although you wouldn't know it from the number of them. The one group that I post all of my notices to is Real Life Education and Second Life. So if you just want to join one education group, that's the one I would pick. And I'm also going to look at the other one that we just heard about. Slide. My Google Calendars help keep the train on the rails. That's it. Thank you, Galen. My Google Calendars, I have my own original calendar, several others that I've been given edit rights to, and a bunch more that I just view all in one place. And you can check and uncheck the little boxes on the left to show what you want to see and not see. Sean Maloney of Craft World has this tutorial on how to add other calendars to yours. Let's see, you can color code calendars. This slide shows this week with some of the calendars not showing. The turquoise events are the VWBPE sessions that I've added to the ISTE calendar. And that's a link again for the ISTE calendar. Next. This slide shows a single day view. You can add an event by clicking any blank space. Make sure you check which calendar you're adding the event to. I have very briefly added my hair and dentist appointment to the ISTE calendar. Next. When you click Edit Event, this form comes up. You need to be sure to set the time zone. I usually use Pacific time, also known as Second Life time. The event time will then adjust to the local time of whoever is viewing it. These calendar events are more simple than Google Plus community events, which will also show up on your calendar. Next. Google Plus communities can really facilitate off-grid communications. Google also doesn't mind if you set up an account for your avatar. The Events button is in the left navigation bar where the red circle is.
That's it.
Next.
Person. Yeah, I like talk person better. Usually dog person. Yeah.
You have an open mic, so you know.
There are actually two decent ones that like at 8 o'clock. And there's something
we can all hear you talking.
Is tonight your woohoo with Jen? Tomorrow night. Okay. Tonight there's a live theater event. If you'd like to go to it. It's you know, anybody can go. You could take Jen if you wanted. Turning this year by popular demand.
Kay, Jerson Alder, can you please turn your mic off?
I don't think she's got her headphones on.
Ahead of time, dinner is
I might encourage people to turn her volume down.
Yeah. I'm going to
on an individual level.
One thing that
or if anybody has any rights to this, maybe teleport her away.
It opened off Broadway. Yeah. They actually license real plays, different from the other places. Yeah. Right. They have done their own.
I think several levels of IAMPER. I think we need to actually. Does anybody have rights on this plot?
Is that they have licensed
actual
Broadway plays.
I am. Can you? Okay. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I couldn't focus at all. Let's see.
And it was starting to go into a very bad place.
Yeah. Talk about a wrong window.
Are we still?
Scenes. It is 9
still hear her.
Days exploring love and loss in a remote mythical almost town called Almost, Maine. It is
yeah, me too.
Kind of a comedy.
Thanks, I am.
Evoke either Oz or Ix, depending on your affection for its women.
You can, I'm just going to just put the rest of this into chat because I can't compete with that. Let's see.
Yeah.
This is about how to create Google Plus events.
No, it's part of the conference. It starts at the champagne reception starts at 9:30. The performance starts at 10, so it's late, but it's just 10 to 11.
And now I can't get my speakeasy to go either.
Yeah, I'll send you the page. And you are welcome to come. You are welcome to bring Jen. Maybe I'll go.
Yeah, I think I'm crashing.
People typing at me in world. Oh fuck, what's all that? Oh.
Oh, am I still here? Yeah.
I think you are, and I think you are good to go.
Yeah, I think I'm probably also out of time. Let's see, what have we got? 4:05.
That's okay, because we still have till 5. I don't know. I mean, I'm fine.
I think what I'm going to do is put the link to the rest of this part of the presentation into chat, and Rhiannon, you can go ahead.
That's okay, because I'm still figuring out a couple of UUIDs on my side, so I would say continue. It's actually better for me, too.
Okay.
And that other people can hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry about all that. Let's see. Okay, Google Community Events. This can be a little bit tricky. You can either create a personal event under your own Google profile, or you can go to a Google community and post an event there, and then that will automatically go to the people. It'll be posted on that community. To do that, you have to be in the events page. You click the Create Event button on the top right. The header picture has to be a certain size, but you can use the headers that they provide. I make my own headers with PowerPoint using a custom size of 13.5 by 3.5 inches, and then I save it as a JPEG image. So that's a workaround. Be sure to set a time zone on this too. I use Pacific time since that's used across all the grids. Check the details before you save it, because then it will notify everyone in the group. Next slide. Facebook's not avatar friendly and tends to be much more cluttered with postings. However, more people are on Facebook, so it can be helpful to post things there too. Facebook pages are one-way communication. You can post events and information, but other people can't add to it unless you make them a moderator. Pages can only be liked, not joined. Next. Facebook groups allow for two-way communication, so it depends on who you have communicating in the group, whether it's valuable or not. Groups can be public, closed, or secret, and events can be created here too. Next. Twitter can be really handy. Depending on how many people you follow, it can get quite crowded though. It's the best medium for a quick one-way burst of information that can be targeted to a group. If your tweets get retweeted, you'll reach even more people. This is the Twitter profile for VWBPE. Next. You can also use multiple hashtags to enable similar tweets to be searchable. In a Twitter chat, the same hashtag on different people's tweets enables a conversation to be followed. Oh, I didn't know that. I'll have to check it out. Next. To create Second Life events that go on their website, you go to this link, log in as your avatar, and under the calendar you click on Submit New Event, where that red circle is. After you read the event posting rules, click I agree. Next. And then that's the sheet that comes in to fill out. You can only make a Second Life event for a parcel that you or one of your groups owns. Next. The SLED list, Second Life Educators, has been around for a while, and it's not used as much, but it can still be helpful. This is a simple listserv where you send an email in the format needed, and it gets added to an email. And if you subscribe to it, you can either get each email or some kind of a digest. Thunder, that's a good idea. Next. Rhiannon, just let me know when you're ready and I'll cut this off. Quite a few virtual world education groups have websites, and of course you can find and distribute information through these too. The sites shown here are Virtual Pioneers and VWR, the Virtual World Education Roundtable, and those are also included on the note card. Next. There are wonderful places to go all over the metaverse. We know that virtual worlds offer unique opportunities for learning, such as Hurrell and Franz's dinosaur building project shown on this slide and featured in this video, and also in his keynote this morning if you got to go to that. Finding them, however, is a whole different story. Here are some ways to get started. Next. You can go on tours of educational sims. Cyrus Hush, shown here, the founder of Expedition Central, gives tours every other Thursday for ISTE. Virtual Pioneers does tours of historical sims every other Sunday. And then Hypergrid Safari and Metaverse Tours do tours on OpenSim. This is Expedition Central. It compiles a great assortment of educational sims. It's hosted on Vista Island in Second Life, which is run by the Virginia Society for Technology and Education. Cyrus has organized the posters by topic, and each one teleports you to the sim. I consider this to be a library of landmarks, and browsing here is a great way to experience discovery and serendipity, just like browsing the book stacks in a library. Next. This is the Vista Index to educational sims. Although the landmarks in Expedition Central are organized, there's no way to use multiple categories or tags, and it's not easy to update. I kept trying to find an alphabetical way to do it, and I just couldn't. So finally, I started a spreadsheet and put all of the Expedition Central landmarks in it. And when I introduced it at a Vista meeting, everyone pitched in to add to the list. It's been a while since anyone has worked on it, but there's still a lot of potential for crowdsourcing. Anyone's welcome to revise and add to it. We're keeping vanished sims on there, highlighted in gray, as kind of a historical record. Most of them are in Second Life, but there's room for other grids too. Ewan Bonham and I started the Cultural Community Hub with a different focus. Instead of places, we focused on communities in Second Life. He and Starlight have continued this project, interviewing community leaders and compiling information. The posters look similar to Expedition Central, but clicking them gives you a note card. There's a link to it in the note card that I gave you. The interviews are all archived here, too. You're welcome. Ewan and Starlight have used this project for educational research with their university, too. I just discovered this last week. This is Abyss Observatory's Open Sim Hub for STEM education. Jan Loria's Abyss Observatory Oceanography project here is just amazing. And he's got a collection of Second Life landmarks that can be rezzed anywhere. This project has extended into OpenSim. This library of landmarks offers a great place to start looking for educational places outside of Second Life. When I first got to Second Life, I was looking for my people, but I couldn't find the American Library Association anywhere as their sim had closed. I did find the CVL, or Community Virtual Library, and even better, I found a librarian to help. Volunteers are always appreciated here, but even if no one's working when you go, there are plenty of interactive resources. Since then, I've found quite a few other libraries in Second Life, but that's a whole different topic. This is an actual library of books in OpenSim, the Project Alexandria, put together by Joseph Graham and Ava Komorowski. This is an article in the Journal of Virtual World Research that tells about it. And this library's organization encourages serendipity just like a physical library does. You've probably seen Selby Evans' virtual outworlding blog, which is much more than a blog. It provides a huge number of resources and connections for anyone exploring education in virtual worlds. Thinker keeps his finger on the pulse of what's happening and shares it with all of us. The Second Life Destination Guide is often forgotten about. This has a whole section on education and nonprofits, with more categories in the left-hand navigation bar. Rhiannon, are you ready?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, cool. Let me go ahead and turn this over to you. Oh, I never did sit at the podium. So we're all set. Zinnia, if you want to breeze through those slides, I'll put in a link in just a few minutes.
So I think I'm terribly slide impaired with this system, very sadly. But that's okay. We will persevere on. Well, we have a couple. I guess that's okay. All right. I'll kind of keep it there for now. So hello, everybody. Sorry for that. It's funny, you know, over 10 years in Second Life, and this is my first day using Speakeasy and this content slide thing, so everybody's a noob at least one day. And let's see if the podium works. Nope, I guess it's not set to sit. Here we go. All it's missing now is the box on my head. So, okay. Hello there, everybody. So I'm Jacques Miller, or also known as Joyce Bettencourt in the physical world. I am the online community manager for TechSoup Global's nonprofit commons and Second Life community, of which Beth and Zinnia are often part of, and Val is a often visitor as well. So, and there's a lot of other people here from the community, so it's great. Nonprofit Commons was designed to lower the barriers of access to Second Life, to create a community of practice for nonprofits to explore and learn about the virtual world, and to investigate the many ways in which nonprofits might utilize this unique environment. Through this community, we provide free office space for qualifying groups, meet and network, create a cooperative learning environment, and foster outreach and fundraising, all in a virtual space. And the URL, nonprofitcommons.org, if you want to look for more information there. I mentioned this in the Virtual Ability panel earlier today. I wear many hats. So I am also the co-founder and vice president of Avacon Incorporated, which is a 501c3 nonprofit org dedicated to promoting the growth and development of the metaverse, virtual worlds, augmented reality, and 3D immersive and virtual spaces. And the URL for avacon.org there as well. And in addition, I am creative director of the Vesuvius Group, a collaborative studio specialized in developing online immersive and social environments for community building. And you can find us there at the vesuviusgroup.com. If you did see Jeroen Franz's keynote, Franz Charming here in the audience, he's a collaborator, longtime collaborator since 2007 when we founded that as an LLC company to do development work for educators and nonprofits in the space. So. Previously, I was digital media producer for the online leadership program at the educational nonprofit Global Kids, and helped produce digital media and immersive learning content and events, both here in Second Life, online, and also in New York City, and other places that we would have events in. OIP.globalkids.org is the blog space for that. A lot of the content is good there for contextual reference, especially earlier programs. Global Kids was when there was a teen grid of Second Life, there was a whole separate grid for those 17 and under. They were the first organization in there, and they did a lot of projects within the Teen Second Life program. Also got a lot of funding from MacArthur Foundation and others for their online digital media program. So, with all of these roles, I've organized many community events, causes, and fundraising campaigns, including the Second Life Community Convention, the Open Simulator Community Conference, the Federal Consortium of Virtual Worlds, and more. I've also helped doing sort of grassroots fundraising and also and other things in my past 10 years here. My work focuses on helping support educational and social good communities, and content that has been key to these. So far, we've talked some of the reasons content curation is important to communities. That the content that communities create, meeting minutes, photos, events, can be compiled together and curated in a meaningful way to that community, allowing you to make better sense of it. Content curation can help build up resources, lists of links, reading lists, files, best practices relevant to your community, and also can add a human, hand-picked element and help your collaborators, help people collaborate and work together in that community. There's a great quote by Beth Cantor, who is a prominent nonprofit technologist on the subject of curation. And when she refers to, what she refers to is the 3 S's of content curation: seek, sense, and share. Content curation, to her, quote, content curation is the process of sorting through the vast amounts of content on the web and presenting it in a meaningful and organized way around a specific theme. This work involves sifting, sorting, arranging, and publishing information. A content curator cherry picks the best content that is important and relevant to share with their community. It isn't unlike what a museum curator does to produce an exhibit. They identify the theme, they provide the context, they decide which paintings to hang on the wall, how they should be annotated, and how they should be displayed for the public. And again, that's a great quote by Beth. And if you're not as familiar with her, she's a prominent thought leader in the nonprofit technology sphere, but I encourage, even if you're an educator, to check out her work. She has a lot of stuff that's, I think, relevant to both educators and nonprofits. For my part of the presentation, I'm going to focus more on the many tools that help you curate content for and about and by your community. Granted, this is not an inclusive list, but I encourage you to explore some of these tools. They often have features like being able to be embedded into your site or shared via social media, or even have built-in ways to email updates. And work with sites like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Flickr, Instagram, Google, and others, and a lot of the spaces that Beth was just mentioning as well, and other tools that have been brought up. So, tools for making collections. There are many tools for making collections of things, images, videos, sites, RSS feeds, links, etc. As I go along and mention these tools, please feel free to weigh in with if you have used any of these tools and your thoughts or interesting resources and links. Definitely, feel free to have this conversation. I usually host those weekly nonprofit commons meetings, and we try to kind of do a bit of back and forth about that. We can consider this a live group curation exercise even. Let's start off with Pearl Trees, which is a visual way of collecting various sites and resources online. And there's a good link to actually Zinnia's Pearl Tree collection of virtual nonprofit world tools. And I encourage you to take a look through that. She has many, many Pearl Trees of interest, but definitely a lot of these tools some of these tools I'm going to mention, and some of the tools that both Val and Zinnia and Beth mentioned are also in this. So, another interesting tool is Digo, which is for curating bookmarks and annotations, and you can also create a community group within Digo and have everyone share to it. And I know it's a it's often it's quite used in the academic sphere, so I'm sure some of you have used this in the space. And if you have, feel free to weigh in. Yes, great. And if you have any links, again, as we go, if you've got links to your own sites on any of these spaces, share them, because, you know, we can compile them all afterwards and have one big list of resources. Listly is another site where you can curate and share your interests by creating and sharing lists. A good example of an SL-related Listly is the Second Life music-focused one, which if you click on this, you would actually be able to take to it. In essence, it's a straightforward, unlike the kind of free-form ability of some of those places, it becomes like a list of items. And of course, you're probably all very familiar with Pinterest and its ability to create boards and pin photos, links, and resources to them. You can invite others to share and collaborate and add to your pin boards. Here, and here's a great one from a nonprofit Commons community member. So I saw that all of you said you use Pinterest. Does anybody else use Pinterest here in the audience? I know it's pretty prominent. And if you do, if you want to share your Pinterest or either your profile link or any specific pin boards that you find are relevant to communities here, nonprofit, whether educational or educational and nonprofit communities here in Second Life. You can also, of course, curate audio and visual resources by using tools like YouTube playlists. Whether you created and uploaded the video yourself or not, you can compile those playlists from those videos. Val mentioned that the #1 content creation site is YouTube. That there's so much video content out there, and often is so complex to kind of be able to read through that, and it becomes this kind of wandering through. So things like YouTube playlists allow you very easily to be able to kind of wrangle all those things by topic or by your class or by social cause or whatever makes sense to your space. And here's an example of how Avicon, I mentioned them earlier, and it's how we use YouTube playlists to curate the mountain of content that gets produced after our events, after the conferences, things like this. There's so much kind of content that comes out of it, and we compile it into lists, YouTube playlists. Similarly, you can use tools like the audio site SoundCloud to compile audio stories and files by creating playlists and also organizing via hashtags. SoundCloud's also a good way too if you wanted to just share community stories, or even a very easy way to create kind of a serial podcast sort of way. So it doesn't necessarily just have to be for sharing, music. Which, while we're on the subject of hashtags, they can be used in powerful ways to tag content and be able to easily search or aggregate all of these tagged items. And if you're not familiar with a hashtag, I mean, it's pretty much using the hashtag symbol with any combination of words or sometimes even letters. If you're doing like a conference here, I think the VWBPE, I don't know if this year's hashtag is VWBPE or VWBPE 15, but you can employ using hashtags throughout all of your social sites you use, wherever you upload or post content, and then be able to use a hashtag aggregator, something like hashtag or even Google search to find them later, and be able to, and then you could even take that further and, post them and compile them into your other tools. You can also use hashtags within Twitter, and I know Val mentioned Twitter in regards to the power of its Twitter lists, which are also very important, but often hashtags are very prominently used within Twitter, and you can use them even during, even to kind of hold live conversations, tweet chats if you're not familiar with them, but through Twitter and live conversation, and using hashtags as a way to do a live curated discussion via those tags. You can almost think of curation tools also as a way to distribute news. You can curate community news and topics via tools such as Scoopit or Paperly. Val brought up Scoopit before. They allow you to bring together articles and posts to a single-stop news site format. And she mentioned Mal Burns' Scoopit. Let me kind of start off first with Paperly first and kind of explain the differences, at least between the two of them. Paperly, and it's paper.li if you go looking for that URL, is more automatic in how it works. So you pick your keywords and topics, and then Scoopit actually jumps from there and allows you to hand curate via the generated suggested relevant articles. So you still have topics and any specific sites you want to keep an eye on, but it's up to you to decide whether you want to drag that article into your paper, into your Scoopit, sorry. And to show you the difference between them, I've actually been curating an overall topic on the metaverse for quite a while called Metaverse Musing. And I can show you what they look like between the two. Here's what it looks like on Paperly. And you'll see I've kind of narrowed down a lot of the, I use a series of some Twitter hashtag searches and looking within specific Twitter lists that I have and other things to narrow down people talking about certain topics within certain lists, and that's how that auto-generates the Paperly. And then on the Metaverse Musings ones, I start with kind of here's the sites and here's the topics, but then I actually, hand curate it from there. Of course, that does mean a bit more touching and work, but you kind of end up with, I think, more custom end results. So here's a few other good examples. These all happen to be Scoopit. I'm actually more of a fan of Scoopit because of that ability to be able to kind of customize it more to your needs. So machinima resources for educators, inspiring women and girls in STEM, and then also my Metaverse Musing as well. But these are just a few. Val brought up Mal Burns' Scoopit. That's another good one. I think David Deeds has one, but I don't happen to have his URL, but he's got a great Scoopit as well. So I encourage you to kind of do a search through Scoopit to find others. Flipboard is also another tool that allows you to create a magazine-like formatted grouping of curated articles and posts that you find online. Oh, thank you, Beth, for sharing that. And so here's a Flipboard I created actually for Nonprofit Commons. It's a bit out of date, so I warn you with that. But it's interesting because you can kind of create more of a slick magazine look, and they also have a great mobile app. So if you're looking to kind of curate a topic and have your students or others accessing it on a mobile app, this is great. And then another tool that I really enjoy is Storify. You can use it as a curation tool for storytelling. In some ways, it has a feel of the way that you're pulling from Scoopit individual things, but this is much more of a curation thing. So your Storify allows you to pull content from social media networks and sites and edit them to tell a cohesive story that can be embedded into a site or shared. So it would allow you to sort keywords and other terms. And actually, let me grab you the link for Storify. I'm surprised I didn't put it in here. I had actually a link for a particular Storify, but actually, here's an interesting one, and I'll put it right into local chat. This happens to be an event that I managed a tweet chat of, and a nonprofit and story making combined event, and it was a live tweet chat that actually went around the globe for 24 hours. So there were various people that took up the tweet chat in various places around the world and kept the conversation going at various time intervals. And then we curated it all into this one unified storify, and you would basically link your accounts and then be able to drag in as you go. And you could bring in videos. And I'll have to find it too. I made an interesting storify long ago that Beth and I were both part of too, so I'll find that link later. Another interesting tool, and this is a newer one, and you know, for transparency's sake, it's actually something that I'm involved with some people that are helping to develop this. But it's an interesting tool that allows you to curate a learning path where each node and step on the path is a resource. So if you were to if you wanted to, you could use it as a framework for learning in and of itself. You know, you could curate a bunch of tools, but in its path nature, it becomes almost like a journey. So you could actually curate it in a time-based thing. So you can say, okay, I want to explain how to learn this particular thing, and I could take people from one point to the next point in a nodal kind of fashion, like you're bringing them on a journey. So here's a great example of a path on learning math skills. Which you can kind of get a good example of what it's like. Oh, thank you for sharing that, Val. I knew I couldn't remember where David was, but his is a good storify. He's got a good scoop up there. But so Edify itself, like I said, I'm actually involved with some of the people that are developing this. So it's an alpha right now, but if you go to requested account, I can make sure that you get in. So interesting thing there. So also, do not forget your own website as a tool for content curation. If you're using a content management system like WordPress or Drupal or things like that, you can easily have many members of your community take part and curate categories and topics. So I mentioned Global Kids earlier, and again, here's the educational community we kept for Global Kids. And a little bit more on that. So we actually used it as a group, not just a place to curate news on what we were doing in our projects and programs, but also as a way to have the youth that were involved in those programs talk about those programs. So we would, so it served many purposes. So we had an editorial system in the back end of the site, and students would be able to write and publish their own posts, and then the editors, which were a lot of the facilitators, would be able to kind of go through them, make sure that they were okay, publish them up, and then we'd be able to curate those via class or via the class or the activity they were involved in, or also via topics. So there's a lot of that particular, and actually I think I lost the dot there, so I don't think that works. Let me get it right. This should work. A lot of the content on there is interesting in historical nature because it does go back to Global Kids was doing educational programs in Second Life as early as the beginning of 2006. So you can see years of kind of built up shared knowledge and content that was curated from both the youth and from us curating the content at that point. So wikis are also great, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar. Wikis are also amazing spaces to have numerous people within your community or class contribute to. And I'm going to pull up a wiki for you in a second. The wikis are, not that I'm ahead, I guess a line ahead of myself. The wikis have certainly been around for a long while. If done well, they can become living documents of the collected, curated knowledge of your community. And wikis are, let me see. You can also create, well, actually I lost a line in there. Oh, there we go. Here's the wiki. Let me grab the wiki here. this is what we have for our nonprofit commons wiki, which is, the hub of a lot of our information. Beth mentions the other wiki. So you can also create newsletters of your community's content and send out newsletters and updates that might come from your site or other content. And as much as it may sound like a newsletter is a very sort of simple, an email newsletter is a very simple thing, ultimately that is also a curated grouping of content that you want to share with others. Granted, probably a bit more formal in nature than some of these other things we're talking about. So how much content curation is too much? If you are thinking there's too much content to curate, and I'm sad that my little dinosaur meme graphic you don't get to see with it, sadly. If you think there's too much content to curate, feeling like your time is being taken up by pinning or tagging or sharing to the many sites out there, well, there are tools to help you manage your community social sharing all in one place. You can look at tools like Buffer, and Buffer app is the URL to that, and also Hootsuite and others that can help you with that. Buffer and Hootsuite can be tied to your social channels, and they help you manage what might be many channels together rather than going from one to another. Now, granted, both of these apps are very deep in a way, but they allow you to kind of aggregate connect all your channels and be able to, they allow you to manage and place all of those, all of these accounts, and then you can view the various feeds of these accounts and choose to respond, reply, or retweet. Yes, I would faint too without Hootsuite. I use it frequently, and especially if you're involved, as I am, in multiple projects or multiple communities, it's very useful. You can kind of create pages to kind of curate content together in that way. You can also use tools to create social recipes. Who knew curating could be a bit like cooking in that way? You can use tools like IFTTT is if this then that, Zapier and Yahoo Pipes to create automated triggers rather than you manually setting up posting. Is Hootsuite free? There is a free version of it that does allow you to do a certain amount, and then it's actually the second tier. Serene is only 2 accounts. It doesn't even, so. Let me kind of move on here. With Ivis, then that. Okay, let's go to this. You can use it to connect to various social or file, photo, video sharing tools online, and there are really lots of things that you can, from there, you can set up almost a visual recipe for that. Here's a simple example that I've used before. Basically, a cross-posting when I update one thing, it updates another. And going through this a little quicker. Zapier is similar to If This and That, but it's more geared towards professional workflows. For example, if you have a web form on your site and every time you get a response, you might want to send that data to a Google spreadsheet your team can see. And then Yahoo Pipes allows you to create free-form drag-and-drop ways of combining data inputs. I don't know if anybody's played with Yahoo Pipes, but you can work with triggers and compile them into one to create a new action. And if you haven't, it's very, very, it takes a little bit, but you kind of get the drag-and-drop ability of it after a bit. And a final note on all of these tools. The nature of the web is ephemeral, and many sites, web apps, and services come and go over time. Any of the content curation tools, or sites, any of the content curation tools or sites you might use now may not be around long term. So be mindful of the archival quality of the site or the service. And if concerned that the content and resources is important enough to not want to lose at some later time, then the best option might be to host your own content. You're on your community's website or a collaborative wiki, as we've mentioned before. So wrapping up this tool list, let's go back to the root of why it matters to curate and compile all this digital stuff. Ultimately, curation is a way to create inspiration, share information, impart meaning via context, and foster community collaboration. And our online communities are collections of projects bringing together resources, best practices, and amazing people. Community itself is a curation, at least I think so. But remember, curated community content can quickly grow stale if members of the community aren't tending to it regularly. So water and feed your community, both the people and the content regularly. So thank you, that's it for me. And I'll just kind of go through, oh yes, Delicious. Delicious is great too. And those are the various ways you can, it's starting over. Never mind the rest of those clicks, but thank you.
Thank you so much, Renne, and it looks like just perfect because our closing time is 4:50 p.m. But as I said, if anyone wants to stick around for a few extra minutes, we'd be happy to take some questions and answer those from any of our various perspectives. Feel free to ask your question in voice or text. I see a question, is there a replacement for LinkedIn in Maps? Does somebody want to answer that?
You're talking about sort of the mapping, the connections within your LinkedIn network? I think.
I'm not sure what the question actually meant, but I think LinkedIn is a great example of curation of a community. She says, yes, it was used to show how communities do connect.
Yeah, I don't know if it's still active. And I mean, there's a lot of open source data tools in general, and I know there was even some interesting Coursera classes that were kind of good intros on how to analyze data and come up with those connections on a step-by-step way, sort of like what LinkedIn does to map your network. And as I mentioned briefly, at least for the Nonprofit Commons, we host weekly meetings on the Friday mornings. And if there are any of you that, in regards to all these tools, because the meetings are sort of multi-purpose. I mean, we have people share their relevant work that would be relevant to nonprofits and social good and library folk. But then we also share a lot of these how-to tool-based sort of topics as well. So if any of you out there want to kind of share, that's another opportunity. And I think Beth could probably set you up also with the VISTI folks and ISTE folks who are doing regular events. There's really an opportunity, I think, the whole knowledge sharing among us, peer knowledge sharing, is super important, I think, in these spaces.
Yes, and I put up that takeaway slide again, just because I think it's important to remind us all about our personal responsibility for digital citizenship, especially as at this Virtual World's Best Practices in Education conference, we're role models for what we want the next generation to be in virtual spaces. And so, if we're not digital citizens, that's a huge responsibility to model. And I think that goes hand in hand with curation, because it's constantly evaluating and thinking about accuracy, authority, the best information, and not just adding to the sea of chaos, I like to call it, of the internet.
I know that, we're all really excellent contributors in supporting what we're doing in virtual worlds and inviting a lot of people in here. And I think events like Best Practices in Education really does help us bring more and more folks in and to understand what we do. And also I find that it's a time for us to discover even more about how awesome things are here. So I also want to encourage you all that to try to capture as much of the chat that has been going on during our presentation, and follow and link and friend all of these fantastic people here. Join us for other meetings, check out our side shares, and I really appreciate the opportunity to work with these gals and share with you guys. So thank you.
I don't know if you want to share that too. So myself and Zinnia and Buffy, who may still be in the audience somewhere, I don't know. Oh, yep, there she is. And Quan, and also the Son of Wisdom Seeker, we have the morning keynote panel, 9 a.m., about nonprofit commons. So we'll kind of be going into a deeper dialogue about that if anybody wants to be there tomorrow morning. And of course, the thing I like to say at the end of nonprofit commons meetings too, if you took pictures here, if you produced media here, tag them. Tag them VWBPE and share them.